Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Yay. Today's guest is Daniel Defernez, a pilot who has flown my family and I on many flights in many different planes. And so it's a real pleasure to have him here because I know flying for me continues to be a struggle and a challenge every time. But I also know there is tremendous interest in flying, which we all do constantly. But we literally have no idea what's happening, what that noise is. Why did the plane do that? What's that feeling? Why are they turning the seatbelt sign on? And do they really have to? Okay. Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Good.
Thank you for being here.
I love the intro.
Isn't it good?
Yeah.
But it's all true.
Even though you're coming a long way, right?
You know, you would think.
Since when it started.
No, thanks to you. And that's what I'm going to talk about. Thanks to you and the education. And I've told you this. When you don't know something, it's super scary.
Yeah.
And I would fly before. Oh, so bad. I was such a nervous, make myself sick nervous.
Yeah.
Terrified. And then the more, obviously we meet you and fly a lot with you and just explaining. And every time you would give me a thumbs up during what I thought was pretty severe turbulence.
And then I'm just chilling in the back. Yeah.
Just you were just and the plane's and you're I'm like, don't you need to hold the steering wheel or something? No.
Yeah, it's crazy. I think, it's interesting how you mention about, the seatbelts, for instance, if it's really necessary or not. It is. Because there's a lot of turbulence unexpected that you never know that it can happen. Sometimes it's reported. Sometimes I can get a report before that, when you text me about it, and then I give you the reports. That's because I'm able to see what they call PIREPs. So PIREPs is basically a pilot reporting, hey, listen, we encountered turbulence at whatever altitude, and then it's get posted in the system so you can see it from different airplanes. It can be an American Airlines, Delta, whatever. It doesn't matter. It can be a private aircraft.
So we're going to get into all these technicalities because I know the questions you have because I ask you these questions constantly. Even I repeat myself sometimes, I know. But the way I start this off is I'd like you first of all, you're my first male guest ever. So congratulations.
Ooh, okay.
There we go.
Appreciate
Here we go.
Okay.
Welcome. Use 3 adjectives to describe yourself, please.
That's an interesting question.
It's so good.
I don't know. I guess I'm hardworking. Would that work?
That works. Any description?
Passionate. I love what I do. And I don't know. I care a lot about people.
Yeah.
That I have with me or around me.
Perfect.
I don't know if that would be a good
That's
answer.
whatever you say is the right answer. So, okay. So where are you from and where did you grow up?
So I was born in Costa Rica, and I was born and raised there for almost my whole life. I learned to fly there too, which it's a lot different than here. There is a lot of different options that you don't get. I would say services and different weather advisories and stuff like that you probably don't get in Costa Rica because of the size of the country. Aviation is not a huge thing over there. It's just airliners and some regional small planes. And so when you get into what type of flying you're doing, it's a lot easier to do it in the States because everything is so square. You can't, it is what it is. You're flying on an instrument, let's say flight, kind of like what we did all the time. And it's the controller telling you exactly what to do, where to descend, slow down, go faster. It depends on the traffic too. So you take that guessing out of the place for the most part. In Costa Rica, you basically have to fly on your own.
Oh my gosh.
You're just flying into small airstrips with no towers, no ATC. So you're communicating with other pilots that are flying around just by talking on the radio and being hey, I'm approaching to this airport, and if you don't hear anybody, that means
nobody's there.
That means the runway is safe and you can land. You do have those kind of airports here, but it's a little bit more, I would say, regulated
Yeah.
than what it could be in Costa Rica.
Yeah. So I want to back up before we start even talking about that. Did you know you always wanted to be a pilot?
Well, when I was a kid, my dad paid me a ride in a ultralight in Costa Rica on a beach. And I did that and I loved it. It was like a 30-minute ride.
How old were you?
Probably 9 or 10.
And what was it?
An ultralight. It's kind of like just one big delta wing.
Like a wing.
It's kind of like a parachute, if you want to call it that way, with an engine in the back.
Oh my God.
Yeah. It's,
I would also never get on that.
I know. Oh, I definitely
Wait,
not.
and so your dad for fun said, hey, do you want to go do this at the
Yeah.
beach?
Because I every time we were going to the beach, I would see that little ultralight plane flying around. And I'll be like, Dad, I want to do that.
And it was for people for recreation?
Yeah, it was just a guy just renting his seat in the back to just fly around
Okay.
out of a grass runway.
Okay. So that was your first time flying?
That was my first time flying. Well, no. First time flying on something different than an airline.
Oh, okay.
Yes. But ever since, I've always enjoyed airliners. I was going to Canada every year to visit family. So I would go during July and during December for a month. And at some point, my dad was like, oh, you can be on your own. So when I was like 11 years old, I was going to Canada on my own.
That's a long flight.
Yeah. Well, back in the days, you would have a stop. There was no direct flights, obviously. I would go to Quebec. So we would have to either stop in Mexico or New York. It depends. But yeah, on my own.
Was either your mom or dad a pilot?
No.
Anyone in your family?
No. I'm the first one that decided to just go this route.
What kind of upbringing did you have? Was it poverty, middle, well off?
I would say middle. Yeah.
What did your parents do?
So my dad had a restaurant in Costa Rica, and my mom had the restaurant with him at some point. They split up when I was 4 years old, and my mom did some side hustling in the background. My dad kept the restaurant, and then like that, it happened. My mom married again with another guy, and my dad just stayed single the whole life.
Yeah. Okay.
Supporting me.
Yeah. So you're in Costa Rica, going through schools in Costa Rica. And it's similar here, right? Elementary, high school?
Yeah. Well, you have school, high school, and then you have college.
College, right?
Yeah.
Did you know in high school, college that you wanted to fly? Like, were you
Yes.
very certain
Yes.
since from 9 years old after that, we were like,
Yes.
I'm going to do something with flying, or you knew you were going to be a pilot?
I knew about it, and then at some point during when I was probably 15 or 16, and I was kind of like getting to a point where I needed to decide what to do. And I told my dad, like, listen, I want to be a pilot. He's like, cool. And then he met some people at the restaurant that would come eat every day. And then one of them had a son that was a pilot. And then the son, he was flying in Europe, and he's like, dude, you shouldn't be flying. Don't even try to be a pilot, because right now there's no demand for pilots. You're not gonna be able to fly.
Really?
Like, there's no jobs or anything. So try to look for something else. So that kind of
Whoa.
like, yeah, it kind of went sideways, because I'm like, okay, so then I'll do something else. And then I started looking into being a mechanic, because I
Okay.
love cars and I wanted to be there. And we ended up coming to another party that I was in with some buddies of mine, and one of them was studying to be a pilot, and he's like, oh, you better be a pilot. Now is the right time. And that was like 6 months after.
What?
Yeah, you have to be a pilot. Like right now, the demand is super high. Like airliners are taking pilots out of the flight schools, and they finish training them to go to the airliners. And I'm like, wow, this is it. This is the time. And so I did. So I went to a flight school in Costa Rica, and I did all my hours and everything. I think it took me 2.5 years.
Before you could fly by yourself?
Well, no. Technically, you can fly by yourself when you have a private certificate. But the problem with the private certificate is that you cannot work for anybody. It's just for you to enjoy your plane and fly around.
Okay.
And ever since I was in training, there is some part of the trainings that you can obviously do some solo routes, right? So you can go from one airport to the other. But in Costa Rica, it's kind of tough because weather is very unpredictable. It's not like here. And you don't have, again, the software or the technology that you have in the States to predict weather and other source of, clouds and visibility and stuff like that. So it was kind of like the instructor was trusting you a lot to sending you on your own to go land in that airstrip, turn around and come back.
Oh. Like that was an assignment?
That wasn't an assignment. It's part of it. And you have to do it to get your certificate.
And are you, you're not communicating with ground control?
Depends on the airstrip, but usually no. Outside of the main airports, which is in Costa Rica, you have Liberia, which is a very used airport now for the airlines. Mm-hmm. San Jose, which is downtown. And then you have Limon, which is on the Caribbean side of it. And then you have Pavas, which is where I learned to fly, which is next to the main airport. But that's about it. Everything else is uncontrolled.
Okay, so then fast forward, you get your full license where you can be employed.
Yes.
Right? What do you do then?
I started working for a charter company as a co-pilot, trying to build my time.
So, all pilots have to do this? Building time?
Yes, you have to build time. Because when you get your certificate, you're around 150 to 200 hours.
By yourself and with someone?
Yes.
Okay.
Dual and single.
Okay.
The problem with that is at 200 hours, first of all, nobody's going to hire you for a captain seat. Nobody's going to trust you, right? It's kind of like a doctor when they just, got their medical degree. And
you're a resident operating on your...
Exactly. Yeah, okay. So what do they do? They go to the hospital and they train and they see other doctors doing their stuff. So it's kind of like the same in a way. And then you go in the charter and you fly with a lot of captains. A lot of captains, depending on who he is, will teach you good stuff and you go from there. So I built time during my time in the charter company, and then at some point there was a jet coming in and I joined the jet because I was in the right place at the right time.
What does that mean? A jet was coming in?
Well, there was a guy with money that was going to buy a jet. And
in Costa Rica?
Yeah, and he needed a crew.
Oh.
And the people who were going to manage the plane, they were the same guys that had the charter company.
Okay, and you knew them? You were working for that charter?
I was working for the charter company, yes. Okay. And so I was the one that had, I guess, the flight time and the capability. And then I had, I really had this, I love what I did, right? And I love what I do, actually. And so they saw this eager in me to go forward. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to go big and I wanted to go. So they said, yeah, you're the right candidate for this.
To do what with the jet?
To be a co-pilot.
Okay.
And then I was paired with a captain. We went to training, kind of like the simulator trainings that we do here. And then I stayed there for like a year and a half. From there, I became an instructor. Oh, because the thing with flying jets is, especially on the private sector, is that you don't get to build a lot of time because they don't fly that much compared to other, I would say, airliners.
Like commuter planes or stuff. They're constantly flying passengers.
Yeah.
Private.
As far as private, you can make 200 hours a year, 250 hours a year.
Right. Because it's just some flights here and there throughout.
Correct. And so if you think about it, if I'm staying there and I have 1,000 hours or 1,200 hours, and then I'm trying to build my time, because I would say in the pilot culture and because of how the regulations are designed, you need to have 1,500 hours to get your what they call the ATP certificate, which is the airliner certificate. And with that, technically you can fly anything you want as a captain for whatever company. So you need at least 1,500 hours to be taken into consideration to fly that. Now, that doesn't mean insurance companies will approve you. Oh. Because that's another thing.
That's a whole other thing.
Because there's one thing is the regulation from the FAA, which is the authority here. The other thing is what the insurance company is going to be able to insure you for. And if they agree that the pilot with 1,500 hours is going to be able to fly that plane, or is going to be insured for that.
Okay, I see. Okay. So is there a universal flight, like FAA is here in the United States? Yes. They administer all the rules and regulations for flying.
All the planes that have a tail number that starts with an N, which is November in our dialect, then yes, it's regulated by FAA.
Why N?
It's the letter they design. So if you see all the tail numbers on the planes.
Even commercials, even tiny little.
Even American Airlines, all of those. If you look on the airliners, it's kind of small though. You don't see
like
it
on the
big.
Plane itself.
Yes, it's written somewhere in the plane. On, like, for instance, your plane, it was N419HF.
Remember, I always got the number wrong, and you're like, I remember you're like, oh, you really know your plane, and I'm like, ooh, burn. Oh, okay.
But you kind of need to know it because most of the times you go to the
Yeah,
FBOs.
kind of need to know it.
And then, yeah.
That's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so then in Costa Rica, you start working for this guy
Yeah.
has a jet, but you're not able to get a lot of hours.
Correct. So then I moved on and I decided that I wanted to be an instructor because as an instructor, you make
In
a
Costa
lot of
Rica.
hours. Yes. Everything in Costa Rica.
So as an instructor, those hours you teach people are counting towards your flight time.
Correct.
Ooh, that's a good way to do it.
Because you're technically the guy in charge in the plane, right?
Mhm,
You're teaching somebody with 0 hours from scratch how to even start the engine, how to taxi, how to take off, land, do all these procedures, right? Stalls.
Oh my God. No, we're not going to talk about that.
But yeah.
Okay, so tell me, from Costa Rica, how do you get to the United States?
Well, me and my partner Esteban, we were thinking about what to do and how to get to the States building a company. So we created this company called JAI Aviation. And it took us a while to get everything sorted out, but we ended up in Oxnard, which we decided it was a good place because we found our first clients that were really close. And so we based it there for a bit. And now all the pilots are everywhere. But yeah.
Wow.
So it's JAI. It's a management company. So we manage planes for different people around.
Explain that for people who don't have planes. What is that what does that mean?
The beauty of the services that we provide is you own a plane and then we do absolutely everything. So we take care of all the invoicing, pilot training, scouting for pilots because it's hard in those days. And we basically it's a one-stop shop.
So you're like a middleman.
Technically, yes.
You handle
we handle absolutely
the
everything.
logistics.
So for the aircraft owner, it's just I want to go from here to here, like we did with you. We're gonna go from here to here, and that's it. That's the whole message we need. We want to know what time do you want to depart, what time you want to land, and we set up absolutely everything. Anything from
so easy
rental cars, transportation, hotels if you need to. Everything is set up through us and taking care of your plane, the maintenance part of it. Like I said, scheduling, crews. Everything.
And so you have to schedule crews 24 hours because I know I would call you and I'm like, we're going to Vegas at 6 p.m. tonight. And
yeah,
like
I mean, if I'm there and I'm
11
available and I haven't had a drink, then I can definitely fly.
Oh, not.
No.
You probably fly a little better. You never know.
But
no,
yeah.
But I'm saying you have like through your service.
Yes.
Pilots on call.
We try to keep a pilot on duty every day.
Wow.
So that you can definitely have the flexibility of saying, yeah, I want to go to Vegas at 6 p.m. today.
Because in the private jet world, people have that kind of lifestyle where they have to be somewhere or want to go somewhere immediately.
Yeah.
And so it is, I just text you, call you, and I'm like, this is where we're going.
That's the beauty of owning a plane. It's kind of like having a personal driver for you. It's
absolutely true. And so I give you the information. I'd like to depart 6 p.m., 5 passengers to Sedona.
Correct.
What happens then for you? What are the steps that you immediately start doing?
Well, I go straight to, first of all, making sure the pilot knows because he's going to be the one responsible for the flight. And then from there on, I make sure the passenger has everything they need. Maybe they need transportation scheduled for whatever reason when they land. Because I want to make sure that once you land, you go to your destination. You know, whether you schedule it yourself because you have your own assistant to do that, or whether you don't and you want me to handle it, then we can do it. Then I make sure the plane is airworthy and everything is fine with the plane. And then it's just a matter of getting everything sorted out, fuel, you know, all the logistics behind it.
So you deal with all the back end stuff. So when the passengers arrive, they get on their plane and they go and they have no idea all of the logistics that had to take place.
You know, we've had moments where a pilot would go sick the day of the flight. And so you need to hurry up and look for a contract pilot. And so you're able to find one. And, you know, it's all the hassles that happen, but it's things that you cannot control at that point. But you try to do the best you can to make sure you get to the flight that you requested.
Sure. Okay, perfect. So for anyone in the private jet business or looking to hire a company to manage your private jet, JAI Aviation, Esteban and Daniel are the jam, and we love them. We use them.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's get into the good stuff because I have all these questions. Okay, so for a passenger, Oh, so let me go through some of the questions because I do have some questions that people sent in. Oh, one of my favorite questions is, and I know these are all generalities. None of this is, law. This is just generally.
Right.
What is the best and worst time of the day to fly? What a good question.
Well, and I think we've talked, you and I, about that. I feel like very early mornings or late
Why?
evenings. Well, the main thing is the sun. The sun takes a big toll in how the whole atmosphere is going to take place. So think about it as the sun is hitting the ground. It's creating all this,
Convection
unstable
cells.
air going up and down.
Like this.
Yeah, correct. And so what happens is you don't want to be flying when the sun is hitting really hard because obviously all that unstable air is just around.
Like in and out of Vegas during the summer.
Oh, yeah.
We had some
We did.
fucking flights.
We did.
Oh, I don't want to think about it. It makes me really anxious.
Yeah. When it's hot in Vegas, it's hot.
I don't know how planes are authorized to fly through it doesn't make sense.
It's not a problem.
It feels like a fucking problem.
It does feel like it, but think about it as if you really start thinking about how many planes,
I know this.
and you know that. Like, I think for me, it's more scary being down the 101.
Also true. I'm
Right?
also scared of that.
Okay. And I'm on the 101 and I'm scared about other people just hitting me or somebody in the front is going to brake hard on me and then I'm going to have to brake hard. Then the guy behind me is not going to see me and boom.
Or road rage.
Right? Exactly. So on planes, they are designed to take a beat. They are designed for it. They have limitations, obviously, like anything else, but their limitations are very high. Like you really have to almost on purpose get it to a point where you're going to bend the wings or anything like that.
Okay, because I have been on some turbulent flights where I do see the wing bending.
But yeah, but those wings are meant to be bent, like to
Doesn't
a
look
degree.
like, and then you see the engine shaking.
Yeah.
Holy
Well, because it's
Jesus.
a big chunk of metal,
Well,
and it is what it is. But like those planes, if you look at videos about how they stress test the wings, you're gonna see the wings bending almost. I'm not gonna say 90 degrees, but very close to it until they actually break. So you have a good wiggle there that you can play around. That the wing is just designed for it, and it's better for it to flex than just staying really hard.
Yeah.
Because then it's gonna bend.
Okay. So, short answer: early morning, late night. If it's a super hot day and you're flying at 1 in the afternoon,
out of Vegas, it's gonna be
out of Vegas. Don't even book it. How about that?
Yeah.
How about don't even do it? I won't. Because of that tidbit which you've shared with me.
Mm-hmm.
You will notice my flights are all now, if I book them commercial, early morning, late night.
And how's been the change?
Amazing.
Yeah.
Although the last flight, I think there was storm activity.
Yeah.
And remember I was texting you from the plane. I'm like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah, like, storms are part of it.
That's different too.
I was just in Alabama yesterday and I flew back the same day. And yeah, there were some storms around.
Was it really turbulent?
No, because I was flying higher than the storms. Yeah, that's
the other part.
That's the beauty of the small planes.
When he says small planes, he means jets.
Yeah.
So small planes it's not what he's talking about. Not those little propeller Cessnas.
No.
Those do not go to 49,000 feet. These like private jets that you see all the celebrities having.
Oh yeah.
What's the ceiling on how high these jets can go?
Well, the one that I'm currently flying right now, it goes up to 51,000.
51,000.
Yes, but 51,000 you really have to be very low on fuel and stuff like that because of weight. So, as higher you go, less air there is. And so the plane doesn't fly it doesn't have the same grip, if you want to call it that way, for easy understanding. So the lower you go, the more air you have, and it flies better. There's more performance. The higher you go, there's less performance.
I thought it was opposite. No. I thought there was more drag with more oxygen or more.
There is,
air.
But at the same time, engines are performing better,
Okay.
and so you got more power.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So, yeah. But like this plane in particular, the one that I'm flying, I can go to 43,000, 45,000 feet, which is a good altitude for that plane. And I'm above everything. I'm above bad weather. I'm above all the airliners.
So above what level do you say there's pretty much zero to very little turbulence?
The turbulence doesn't really matter as far as altitude.
Oh.
It can happen at any altitude. But because on the airliners, you're kind of like on the levels where a lot of those storms are, you're more susceptible to that kind of like turbulence rather than if you're up there at 40, 45, less chance of turbulence. But it may happen. Like at some point, we were at 45,000 feet yesterday, and, you know, in some cases, it was bumpy. Nothing I can do about it. You know,
you just fly through it.
I just fly through it. There's nothing wrong about it. And I look back, passengers chilling, so
okay,
nothing to worry about.
And what if passenger wasn't chilling? Like how you looked back and seen me a couple times.
Well, you know, it all depends on the passenger, of course. But I think the main thing is you look back, if he sees that you're having a good time or you're not stressed about it, it just changes a little bit.
Changes it.
You know, because
I know.
If I look back and I'm like I'm scared about it, then it's not the same.
Not at all. Because if you're scared.
Yeah. But if I'm chilling and I'm just like, hey, all good, all
thumbs
good.
Up.
All right, cool. Then that's it. The thumbs up.
That's so reassuring. I'm telling you. Okay. Oh, okay. So then explain why airliners do fly at that level that we do fly. Because a lot of the questions I get where people are asking is, why can't you fly around the turbulence, or why are we forced to go through the turbulence in a commercial plane?
Well, so here's the thing. Sometimes airliners, you know, there's a lot of airliners around. They fly almost at different altitudes, but they're pretty much everywhere. So what happens is when you're flying, you cannot deviate around as you wish because you're on a controlled airspace. You have ATC, which is the controllers that are instructing you where to go and how to go.
Air traffic control.
Air traffic controllers.
Okay.
So here's the thing. Sometimes you want to deviate because you have a big thunderstorm in the front and you want to deviate to the left, and maybe to the left there's another plane going.
Oh.
So they're going to be like, yeah, okay, so I can give you another vector, which is another heading to turn around to going through. Good thing is with the technology, how it is right now, even the air traffic controllers, they have screens that shows the weather. So they know when a pilot is saying, listen, I have weather in the front, they know about it.
Okay.
So they're going to guide you through another route and follow everybody else around the storm. Turbulence, like I said, you can't see turbulence. It's not something that you can expect. It's unexpected because it's clear. It's most of the time it's just clear. Unless you're going through clouds or a thunderstorm, then yeah, you're going to have turbulence inside the cloud or inside the thunderstorm. Most likely, everybody that I know will avoid thunderstorms. Nobody wants to be in a thunderstorm because you don't know what's inside. It could be rain. It can be hail. I've gone through hail. It's not fun.
Oh my God.
It sounds bad. It's not gonna bring the plane down, but it will create a mess. Like when we had hail, the whole nose of the plane lost the paint.
Were you scared?
I was not scared. I was shocked by the sound more than that I was scared.
The sound?
Yeah, because it sounded like rocks.
You weren't scared of what the plane was going through, more so what you were hearing.
Correct. But I was not scared. I was surprised by the sound. Let's put it that way. I wasn't scared. Like I know that's not going to throw me out of the sky, but I was concerned. I wasn't concerned. I was surprised at how it sounded because I was never in that same position. I was never in hail in my life.
Why couldn't you see the hail ahead of time?
Well, it depends. When it happened, I wasn't the pilot flying.
Oh.
And I was in the back taking care of the passengers while it happened.
Oh, how awful. Were the passengers freaking?
No.
Oh.
No. But they knew something happened. They knew something happened because when they came out of the plane, they're like, did we had hail?
Nobody had any questions when this noise was happening.
No. I was serving them coffee.
You know what you would have been serving my ass?
Rosé.
That, but in a hailstorm, you would have been giving me a horse tranquilizer full of gin or vodka.
Yeah.
Never in my life.
Yeah. I've never encountered hail since then.
Wow, how interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so go ahead.
Going back to it, airliners, they fly where all the thunderstorms are happening. And so
because of engine performance, which saves gas.
Correct. And airliners, because they're big airplanes, pressurization systems works a little different. They cannot go as high. They're limited to 41 for the most part, 41,000 feet. Yes. The problem is at 41,000 feet, it's pretty hard for them to get there because of weight. You know?
Oh.
So they're usually between the 30s to maybe 36, 38,000 feet. That
Okay.
would be top. It's really rare when you listen at an airliner at 41,000 feet.
Does it feel different, the actual flying of a plane, when you're up near 50,000 feet?
I cannot feel it as itself because it's on autopilot, and
Oh.
most planes are. But if you take the autopilot out in that scenario, it is definitely more challenging to fly at high altitude than it is at low altitude.
Why?
It feels like, I don't know, mushy. It's kind of weird. It doesn't feel right.
Like resistance?
No, it actually feels like you're turning it. You're turning the controls, but it's not really turning as you would
Oh,
expect.
How weird.
Because there's less air, and because there's less air, the control surfaces don't work the same. They don't
Oh.
have the same, I would say, they just don't work the
Right.
same.
That makes sense. I get it.
Yeah.
But most of us don't have to worry about that because we're in commercial planes who do not go that high. So no mushy feeling for us. Thank God. Okay. So talk to me about when we take off.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, I'm asking you very rudimentary, very basic questions,
we
but
wanna-
these are the questions we all have.
Okay.
When we're taxing, is the plane taxing means pulling out of the gate,
Right.
going down the runway, and going to the main
Right.
runway?
The main runway.
When your engines rev up, how come sometimes when the planes park before you take off, you hear the engines get really loud? Don't they do that sometimes? Don't they like get really loud?
It only happens if you add power.
If
So
you-
if they're adding power,
Yeah.
even probably to start moving,
Oh, okay.
then that would happen.
Okay. So then when you're taxiing down the runway, which means we're accelerating,
Right.
explain to me that concept of once you hit a certain speed and a certain point in the runway, you can no longer abort takeoff. You have
Right.
to take the takeoff.
So
I'm
that's
getting
called-
nervous.
No. Okay. So let's go through that. On most of the airplanes,
Any airplanes, right?
any airplanes,
Okay.
you have, well, except small props, they don't work the same, but on the
I'm not getting on those. Don't worry.
but on the airliners and jets and all that,
Yeah.
they have what they call, even on your plane that you had before, they have what they call decision speeds, right? So it's based on performance, weight, temperature, you name it. So what happens is there is a set speed where you're supposed to take a decision whether you're going to go or not. After that speed, you cannot abort because one or the other will happen. Either you're not going to have enough runway to make an effective stop,
Mm-hmm.
or it's just not going to have the performance for it.
Got it.
So basically, you have to stop. If you get to that point where you get to that speed and nothing happened, then you're free to go. If something happens right before that speed, then you need to abort. Basically, is what it is.
And they slam the brakes on.
They slam the brakes, reversers, all the what we call spoilers, which is the little stuff that come on
yeah.
the top, like panels that goes up. Especially when you land, you'll see them.
It's the same process that you would do when you're landing.
Correct.
Okay.
It's basically the same. You stop with absolutely everything you have on the plane. Wow. And you just come to a complete stop.
And you train for this.
I trained for that, yes. And so if you have an emergency where something happens after that decision speed, then at that point, you have to continue the flight no matter what, even if you lost one engine. And we get trained for that. And the way it works is some of the memory items is what they call it, some of the stuff that you need to remember every time you have that. Let's talk about, for instance, the plane that I'm flying right now. You got to maintain directional control. So you got to maintain the runway, basically, because obviously when you lose an engine, you're getting more thrust on the other side and you're getting pushed
You're right.
outside of the runway. So the first thing is you got to maintain control. You got to maintain to stay at least on the runway, and then you got to lift off. When you lift off,
Can a plane lift off on one engine?
oh, 100%.
It can?
Yeah, you can.
Okay.
It's designed for it. It's proven
Okay.
to do that.
Well, that's reassuring.
It's part of the testing. Yeah, because it will not get certified if you cannot do it,
Okay.
especially in the airliners. And
I never knew that.
yeah, so you can definitely take off on one engine, and you can even climb, get to a certain altitude, get the checklist out, figure it out, come back
And you
land.
can just like hang out circling until you figure out a plan on one engine.
Yeah.
And everyone's okay with this?
Yeah. And we even get trained to a point where you can lose an engine on departure. You climb, you do your checks, you come back and land, and they want you to go around on one engine. So
Holy
not even land.
shit, so you don't even land.
No. So you go around on one engine, that's part of the training, and then you go again and try it again. You're like, come on now, I'm on one engine, I kind of want to land. But they want to teach you on, and for you to feel how the plane reacts on one engine, full power, coming out of a landing configuration, which is totally different than a takeoff configuration for the most part, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they teach you all that. It's part of the training, and that's why we go to training. Well, on the private sector, Part 91 is what we call it. You go to training once a year. For the charter companies, it's once every 6 months.
Oh.
Same for the airliners.
So commercial pilots train every 6 months.
Every 6 months,
Like they go through
simulator.
the whole a simulator.
Yeah, they have like a syllabus, right? And like a checklist, and they go through, okay, you need to do stalls, you need to do steep turns, you need to do engine failures in flight, on departure, whatever. Engine restarts. Do
the simulators really feel like you're flying?
It does.
Really?
Yeah. They call level D simulations, which is basically what the FAA also understands as. Yeah, it's basically flying a plane.
Okay, that's cool.
You feel I would say the G forces. And
How the hell do they do that?
Well, if you look at the simulators, I have videos, but then you can see the actual, you're inside a box, right? And there's like hydraulic pistons in the bottom of it, which make all the movements going on. When you're like adding power, then the whole box bends towards the back to make you feel like, when you brake, then the whole box goes to the front, and then you feel like, I'm stopping. Okay. So, and it's pretty accurate.
And then they have to pass training every 6 months. Like,
yes. Yes. There is kind of like a check, right? That has to be done at the end of the training to make sure you're competent and you have all the standards, the minimum to be flying.
Okay, so when passengers are experiencing turbulence through their flight, well, the seatbelt sign is off, and then all of a sudden, the captain comes on, and the seatbelt sign, and then they make the flight attendant sit down. Oh, Lordy.
Well, that's because I'm sure people
are the pilots scared at this point?
No, they're not scared. They're just concerned about people walking in the back freely like nothing's going on.
Okay.
Because pilots are seated with the seatbelts on for the most part. When you're hitting turbulence, and I'm sure people have seen the videos where all of a sudden you have people just flying around.
Send you all the ones I find on TikTok.
Food everywhere, because there were probably a flight attendant just going through with a caddy, and then all of a sudden, boom, everything flies. It's tough, but that's unexpected turbulence. But that's why you hear all the time when airliners are flying, like they're asked the controllers, hey, what can we expect? What's the ride report ahead? Is it going to be smooth, turbulent, whatever? And then the controllers will come back and say, it's pretty good. I have no reports of turbulence at your altitude. Again, airliners are flying every single day. It's a very good report. Yeah. So that's how they get it. And so when they get the seatbelt fast or the seatbelt sign on, that means we have reports of turbulence or uneven, air. Yeah. It's not going to be smooth. So why don't you just sit? I feel like people need to understand, if they're seated, just get the seatbelt on. It's not uncomfortable. Even if you're seated. Yeah. Even if you're seated, just keep the seatbelt on. It's not uncomfortable. I mean, I've kept the seatbelt the whole flight, and you don't even feel it at some point.
I'm just reading the questions people have. Okay. So at what point then does the pilot, is it in their discretion to turn the seatbelt sign on? Is it up to them, or is there some protocol that if turbulence is expected to be at a level 3, protocol says you should turn the seatbelt on?
So it's at pilot's discretion for the most part. It's by regulation, you have to have the seatbelt sign on for takeoff and landing. That's pretty obvious. But then while they're cruising, they can turn it on and off at their own discretion, whatever the captain feels like.
Really?
At that point, yeah. If he feels that it's going to be rough, then he'll turn it on. If he feels it's going to be smooth, then turn it off and let people walk around. But again, and you can hear it every single flight. They're like, even if you're seated, just keep your seatbelt fastened.
I do. Don't worry. Totally. You can't get that thing off me. I'll tell you that.
You don't want to be flying around?
Hell no.
No.
Okay. So I was going to ask you something else. Okay. Tell me about when we take off and that feeling. We take off and you feel all the pressure and then you're floating and then all of a sudden it feels like the plane's slowing down and dropping.
After you take off?
Yeah.
Because it's reducing thrust. Because normally the takeoff thrust or the takeoff power, it's limited for 5 minutes on some aircraft.
Okay.
At least on the ones I've flown. And so after 5 minutes or before that, you're supposed to bring the power back. In your case, what you're feeling, especially out of Los Angeles, for instance, they keep you pretty low at the departure because there's planes absolutely everywhere. Like I've flown on top of LAX at, I don't know, 4,000 feet, 3,000 feet on top of it. And so what they do is on departures, there sometimes will give you like a limit, an altitude limitation, which is going to be like, okay, you got to on departure climb to 3,000 feet, which for an airliner, it takes, I don't know, 30 seconds, not even to a minute to get to that altitude because they have good performance. And so when they get to 4,000 feet, they have to level off. It's all autopilot control at that point.
At what point does autopilot go on?
They can turn it on at 500 feet to 1,000 feet.
The pilot turns it on?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was automatic.
Once they get the gear up and everything up, then they hit the autopilot.
Is it preferable? Do pilots prefer that?
Yeah. The plane is designed for it. It's meant to be flown on autopilot for the most part.
Wow. Okay, so that feeling, we take off, you feel all this power, and then it feels like
it's dropping.
It gets quiet.
It's actually the plane leveling off, and because it's controlling the speed of the plane too.
Okay.
So if it's going to hit the speed, then the power is going to be reduced. Everything is on autopilot. The pilot has no control at that point of what's going on. I mean,
don't tell me that.
The pilot has control. It has authority to overtake the autopilot at any point.
Oh, really?
But the autopilot is doing everything, like the leveling off, cutting power, and then when they get clear to keep going up, then they change the altitude selector, and then they keep going up, and then the power is again reintroduced, and that's where you keep feeling like, whoa,
yeah.
Then come back, whoa.
So that's why you feel like it is going faster and slower.
Correct. That's because they get instructed, and that's what I was telling you at the beginning is the ATC or the air traffic controllers, they are instructing you and they're basically pulling you by hand and telling you, okay, you got to keep climbing step by step because there's other planes flying around and they just have to keep you away from it.
Okay, so speaking of traffic and airplanes, and you explained this to me and I never knew this, but how come with all the planes in the sky at any given moment, how are there just like no incidents? Well, everyone just kind of flies over each other.
So it depends on the heading that you're going. So if you're heading towards the East Coast, for instance, you're talking that you have to be at a odd number. So meaning you got to be at 33,000 feet, 35,000 feet, 37,000 feet. If you're flying west, then you have to be on not odd, but the other one even. So you have to be at 34, 32, 38, and that's how you prevent people from flying, against.
Is that a universal?
Colliding. Yes.
Like world, every pilot in the world?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, that's pretty standard.
Other than that, what are some other universal rules? Because that's pretty interesting.
Regarding the flying on or the airspace, it's pretty much that. And the thing is that they're separated by 1,000 feet between one plane and the other. Okay.
Yeah.
When they're flying against each other, I would say.
Yeah.
Or a head-on heading. If they're flying the same direction, then they can be at the same altitude, but they have to be separated by a certain amount of miles.
Okay.
Between each other.
Can pilots talk to each other?
Like not when you're talking to ATC. Like when you have a controller in the frequency, then no. Because it's pretty busy and you don't want to be like, hey, what's up, man? How you doing? You have a coffee yet? So what they do is sometimes you would hear them saying, hey, whatever, American 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then they switch to this frequency, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And usually it's not a used frequency, so you can talk to each other.
Okay.
If you really had something important.
Sure.
Airliners, they have this system, which is a computer, and they can send messages and stuff like that too. I've barely encountered airliners talking to each other for the most part.
Okay. Last question. What about if you're flying in a foreign country and you don't speak their language? How do pilots communicate with ground control?
So English is universal.
For aviation.
Yes.
Really?
So all the controllers, all the pilots are supposed to be able to speak English, understanding at least aviation language, right?
Really?
Yeah. So like if you go to Costa Rica, for instance, and you don't know Spanish, you can speak English and no problem.
So any country we go to, if we meet a pilot that flies in that country, they can speak aviation to me.
If they fly international.
If they fly international.
Because if you're just planning on staying local, and
you don't need it.
You don't need it.
If you're, and that's part of your license, or that's.
Yeah, you get, it depends on your English level. Then you get kind of like I would say a number in the back of the certificate, especially on the Costa Rican license, where it tells you whether you have a good English or not. And depending on that, you're going to be recertified, or you're going to be checked to see if your English has improved or not. And then you're going to keep getting that score up and down. Depending.
Got it. Okay, for 2 more questions I forgot about. Sorry. One, what do you have like a favorite flight that's in your memory? Like anything, any flight that you're just like, oh, that was cool. Esteban.
A particular flight that I liked, I would have to say Sedona.
Oh,
That's one of my favorites.
The Mesa Airport.
The Mesa Airport.
Oh.
Yeah, and we went there.
We did. You flew us.
Yeah.
And then one time, what he did is he did a circle around the Grand Canyon so we could see that. Remember?
Oh yeah.
We were flying.
The horseshoe bend.
The horseshoe bend. You're like, hey, do you want to see the Grand Canyon?
Yeah.
Who am I to say no?
Yeah.
It was turbulent though. I remember that.
It was.
Can't believe it. And I'm like, okay.
But people were
and
enjoying
I'm trying
it.
to take pictures and I'm like, just fucking land this fucking plane. But look it up, guys. The Mesa Airport in Sedona.
Yeah.
It's out of this world.
Yeah, that's pretty nice. And then
taking off is kind of scary too.
When I went to Europe, I would say Iceland was pretty nice.
Landing or taking off? You mean just seeing?
Just Iceland as itself. Well, your question was related to landing and takeoff.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Sedona definitely. That was my favorite.
It really was special.
Yeah.
Okay, my other favorite question. Have you ever seen a UFO?
No.
Tell me the truth.
I have not. No. I'll get arrested if I say so. No, I'm kidding.
I don't believe him. Well, you've seen those videos.
Yeah.
Do you believe them?
No. I feel like there's always an explanation to it. That's my...
Well, I don't agree. So I think they're real.
I mean, they could be.
No,
you never know. But
I know.
For what I've seen, it's just,
There's
it could
always
be anything.
Like a UFO.
Like now. Well, yeah, but like now, you have so many drones that can be flying around. And who knows?
Okay. Well, we'll just say that that's a non-answer because I think you just don't want to tell us.
Scratch it.
Okay,
it.
so takeaways are pilots are not scared during what we feel like the worst turbulence of our life.
No.
The pilots are not up there like pushing buttons and trying to hold onto the steering wheel.
No. It will get you scared when you lose an engine.
Oh.
And it's not scared, but it will get challenging.
Okay.
But
there's training for that and
there is.
know what to do. And
yes.
this happens often sometimes.
Yeah.
Okay. And that, a little glass of rosé can just help us get anywhere.
Yeah. I would be more scared of a passenger that is being aggressive.
Sure.
Because that's something that you cannot control.
Oh,
you know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, so at this point, what do? You're controlling the plane, but you have an aggressive passenger that wants to, I don't know,
Have you ever had an aggressive passenger?
No, thanks God, no. But that would be something I would be scared of.
I got pretty close to being aggressive sometimes, so I get angry quickly. Anyways, Daniel, thank you. It's such a treat. Thank you for sharing all your pilot know-how. Thank you. I appreciate you. Yeah. Happy flying.
Yeah, for sure.